Good afternoon. I'm Joe Pryweller, Conference Director for Plastics News. Welcome to the fourth in our ongoing series of Fireside Chats, fueled by Holland and produced by Plastics News. We are proud to bring you this streaming event where you'll hear live, casual conversations with leading experts on a variety of significant topics in the plastics industry. We are broadcasting live today via YouTube from downtown Chicago, and you will have the opportunity to ask questions in real time and receive on-air responses. To participate in this live chat, you must have a Google account with an associated YouTube channel. If you do not have a Google account, you can either create one or add a YouTube channel to an existing account. You can type questions at any time in the chat box to the right of your screen. Today's chat looks at the digital world and how it has changed everything about today's business operations, from organizational structure to delivering value. Our speakers today are Neil Goodrich, Director of IT at the Holland Company, and Eric Rail, Director of Digital Business for Rockwell Automation. Join us to hear them discuss their company's digital journeys, the moment that started them, how they have progressed, and where they stand today, as well as any surprising discoveries they have made along the way. You'll learn some new tools of the digital trade that will help your bottom line business prosper, and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions of Neil and Eric that can relate specifically to your own IT challenges. Before I turn the conversation over to Neil, let me first introduce our presenters. As a technology leader at the Holland Company, Neil Goodrich is responsible for not only setting the IT strategy, but driving change within his organization. His multidisciplinary background includes previous lives in accounting, project management, and investigation, while his recent work is focused on building IT teams around cultures of creativity. As Director of Digital Business at Rockwell Automation, Eric Rail leads Rockwell's global digital transformation strategy and organization, with strategy aimed at evolving Rockwell to become a more digitally enabled business in the areas of full lifecycle customer experience, e-commerce, and data. Prior to his focus on digital transformation, Eric was the Director of Digital Marketing at Rockwell Automation and held similar positions with Robert W. Baird & Company and the United States Bowling Congress. Allow me now to turn the conversation over to Neil Goodrich of Holland Company. Neil, take it away.
Thanks, Joe. So thanks for coming down, Eric.
A pleasure.
I think digital gets used a lot, right, as a word, and so let's level set and talk about what does that mean at Rockwell? What does the digital transformation mean? What does the organization look like?
Sure. There's multiple digital transformations going on at Rockwell. There's those that are in support of advancing our product and service offering to be more digitally delivered, digitally positioned to support our customers' own digital transformations. And then there's digital transformation that is more inside from a capability standpoint that is intended to support that advancement of our product and service offering from a digital perspective. And so the way we define digital transformation at Rockwell Automation is around a core set of key capabilities that we're trying to bring into the organization that allow us to be more digitally enabled, but then add an enablement platform and add scale to those capabilities so they can be deployed across the company in support of our business strategies. And so in pursuit of that, we have defined a program to pursue that and created a new organization that I lead to go after that. And it's around, that organization is structured around some of those key capability areas that we're trying to bring in, like sort of full life cycle customer experience management from a digital perspective, data and product information, and how that gets used to support that full life cycle engagement of our customers. And then new business models or strategies that we want to pursue, like e-commerce or activities like that. One unique area that we have in the digital organization, though, is around what we call our market access model, which is how we go to market in the 4 geographies or regions of the world that we do business. And the reason we have that a team focused on aligning with that market access model is that our market access model is somewhat unique. We're distributor-led, but we call it limited distribution, which means that we have a distributor. We only have one distributor that sells in a given geography, and so the digital space can be disruptive to distribution. And in some ways, we want it to be disruptive,
Sure.
but we need it for it to be disruptive in a very intentional and strategic way, and in a way that complements and advances our capabilities in terms of market access rather than conflicts with it. So it's focused on some of those areas so that we can drive out those specific capabilities and retain not only a program level focus, but a sustainable one as well.
So I know for us, I think digital has become sort of shorthand for thinking differently about business experiences, offering value in different ways that are sort of outside the traditional model of here is my product, right? It's and to your point about end-to-end life cycle, what else in that touch point can I do that's engaging? How can I do something how can I add value to that customer's experience without actually, it's not product related, right? So I think we're probably less formal, right? I don't think we have a, you're talking about market access and platforms. I think we're just sort of constantly scanning our internal landscape for opportunities to sort of turn stuff on its head. But it sounds like your organization, given the size of Rockwell, your team has to cut across all those disciplines, right? Because if you waited for each marketing, right? So what does that look like? How did you guys structure that?
So, our digital transformation initiative is very much outside in driven. It looks at our customer base and our partner community and what they expect and demand from us to be successful. And so, and internal organizational boundaries mean nothing to our customers, right? And so Rockwell traditionally, like many other B2B companies, sort of, often projected itself into the marketplace similar to the way they structured themselves as an organization. And that just doesn't work anymore because the way our customers at least engage with us now is they're engaging with us across those organizational boundaries in the way they buy products and service from us, in the way they expect us to support them digitally. And so, we had to come up with a mechanism to lead digital transformation that really considered more how our customers viewed Rockwell and how they want to engage with us versus how we thought we need to project ourselves to the market. And so, that organizational structure that I talked about is enterprise. So it is intended to drive capabilities and strategy that recognize the need to align with and collaborate with all of those various organizations within the company, but the manifestation of those capabilities in front of the customer does not consider that. So as a company, as a customer moves through their life cycle with us, we expect and want and are driving toward their digital engagement with us to be connected across their full life cycle. So as they move through their buying process, the experience they have with us builds upon itself. The interactions they have with us inform whatever we do with them next, or whatever they do with us next. As they move through purchase, as they go into being a customer and need support and ongoing service, the intent is that for all the interactions they've had with us, regardless of who is supporting those interactions internally, just build upon themselves and become available to the customer throughout their life cycle with us. But, in addition to that, the same thing happens internally. Customers no longer have kind of a one-on-one relationship with their business units and things like that. They have relationships across the product and service offering. So the need for the connectivity of that experience is important internally as well, because as we gather information about what our customers do with us, what their interests are, we can be much more proactive and strategic about how we seek to engage with them and how we seek to enable them within even a product or service offering group. So there's certainly internal and external advantages and benefits to that, but the bottom line is that the organizational boundaries from a customer engagement perspective kind of evaporate when we're trying to introduce capability.
I think that's,
and that's very hard to do, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why, the importance of creating that standalone organization that is going to retain focus on the capabilities and the priorities that you're bringing into the organization from a transformation standpoint, but also be that facilitative body that's going to make sure that you're working across the organization to get those things done.
And so that's the voice of, to some degree, it's the voice of the customer, the voice of the experience.
Absolutely.
Saying, I don't really care if this belongs in your department or in this department. What we need to focus on is the outcome of that touch point, right? I'm thinking about every call center I've ever called, and they tell you have the wrong department, and you get transferred. You keep re-entering your account number at every, right? And I think that's one of those hidden places, right, as you evaporate those barriers, where you can start to find surprise and delight moments, right, where there's a value there, where I have this positive experience where I don't have to enter my account number again, right? Or that you already understand who you're talking to. You know that I bought that thing last year. You know that I had service on it, right? So when you talk about providing that experience, right, that requires whoever is in your office to have that perspective. So how do you get equipped? How do you go learn what it's like to be a customer? Because we've certainly, right, there's a move, traditional IT says you sit in a room and you draw the flow chart and you write the, so how do you go get the perspective so that you can make decisions or think like a customer?
Sure, there's two ways. And the first step, and this isn't one of the ways, but the first step was having a functional discipline focused on customer experience. That we have a team within our digital business organization whose specific role is to go out and understand through a number of mechanisms what our customers want, what the market is, where the market is going in terms of what customers want, and then sitting down with customers in a lot of cases through various interaction opportunities that we have with us to just listen to them, talk about some of the things we're thinking about, get some feedback based on those things, and have that sort of intelligence drive some of the prioritizing that we do. And so, we have put a roadmap in place from a digital business transformation perspective that is driven by that outside-in view, but it's also based on the fact that we know we have capabilities that we need, that we are either absent of or deficient in, and we need to go address those things. But the manner in which we address them is very much driven by what our customers are asking for in that regard. And so we do a lot of outreach and research, whether it be virtual or in person, to just sit down with customers, talk about the nature of their experiences with working with Rockwell, the pain points that they have in our current state, and share with them some of the ideas that we have for how to advance our engagement and enablement platform for them and have them respond to that. The other way is that we've adopted an execution methodology within digital business that we call Now, Near, Next. And what that's based on is the concept of like proving and moving, or not waiting 2 years of going through requirements development and building out documents and things like that before you actually do anything. But it's actually starting with an idea, achieving some level of activation of that idea, and then getting that in front of customers, and then learning as you go, and having them help you advance that capability. So whether that is something very foundational like data, or how we want to structure our product information management capability, or it's interaction platforms or capabilities or websites or whatever that we're going to land in front of our customers to engage with us, we use this Now, Near, Next methodology to, within 6 to 12 months, actually have something actionable that we can work with a stakeholder or customer on, and begin to test and learn from, and then move as we go and build out as we go, based on what we learn and understand from our customers. So, the next is sort of the roadmap. That's the future state, ideal state. And then the now and the near are things that what can you do over the next 6 to say 18 to 24 months to begin to activate capability in pursuit of that next. The interesting thing about the next is that you never really get there because it probably changes. And that's the benefit of this methodology. It allows you to account for those changes instead of realizing things have changed when you finally get there.
Yeah, I think that's another huge departure from sort of classic technology, software development, product development, to the digital age where, right, everyone gets updates on their phones.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that has become that was a vehicle we used to start to explain a new methodology, that the project is not stand up a product and then it's done, check the box, on to the next project. That tool needs to evolve. It needs to have things. Someone needs to be monitoring that tool. Take those functions that nobody wants out, build to it, right?
Right.
I think that was, and through, not through some people in a conference room saying, I think we should take this out, I think we should put it in, but from the actual feedback
Yes.
from the end users, whether that's the customers or whoever that is. And I think that was our moment of digital genesis. The technology team was asked to put in a CRM. And so our first step was to go watch those interactions. And through that, we discovered, watching conversations with customers, that the conversations were much, much, much broader than, let's talk about this potential piece of business. It was questions about invoices and availability and pricing and samples and all kinds of things. And when we came back, the discussion turned into what would eventually become our first digital product. But it was because we approached it differently, because it was field research, because we were talking to the person who was going to use that tool, not thinking about it in a conference room.
Right.
How did that come about for you guys?
Well, for us, we've been on this journey for about 3 years. And I don't mean we've actually been doing things for about 3 years. We really started talking about kind of a digital model in earnest about 3 years ago. And it originally was based on the idea that given the space that Rockwell occupies, industrial automation, which tend to be in many cases complex product offerings and long sales cycles and things like that, we were trying to figure out, is there a play for e-commerce as a selling model available to us somehow? And so we brought in some help to start looking at what opportunity might look from an e-commerce perspective. But very quickly into that exercise, what we began to realize is that, this wasn't about a transaction, all right? This is about a new manner and a new method and a new expectation of engaging and enabling customers and our business. And so, and even if we were to look at just the transaction, we were not in a position to be able to activate that in any way because of some very foundational limitations we had around data and product information and the ability to just conduct business that way. And even from an expertise standpoint, we didn't really have those kinds of skill sets. And so this quickly evolved into the idea of digital transformation, that this wasn't, the transaction was the least of our requirements and opportunity here, but it was, how do we look at our customers' full life cycle with us and really evolve that to the idea of digital commerce, which happens from the point they first start kicking the tires on you as a company through the 20, 30-year relationship that you have with them as a customer, and how you support and enable and engage with them over that life cycle. And throughout that process, how you sow an experience and an engagement with your customers that is so good and has such value to them that it breeds loyalty and that ongoing relationship. There's a lot of research and there's a body of work out there now that talks about how you can monetize customer experience, how it is now actually you can quantify the return it brings into your company, and it is a meaningful, it has meaningful business value to your customers. So if you can make it easy for me to do business with you, particularly in the B2B space, there's value in that sort of reduces the effects of price sensitivity and other things like that. So there's some real sort of market share protection in there as well. Yeah. The better and the more engaging you can make that experience.
Well, I mean, that as I listen to you talk, that's the same story, right? Which is, you went out looking at this transaction, trying to solve this transactional thing. Then if you really watch what was happening, what the customer was looking for was this much broader discussion.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And it has led us to this, to a model. We launched a customer platform a few months ago, and the premise was, it's all the things that we have from a data perspective about you, the customer, for you to come use. We're not asking you to do anything. We don't want you to do any work there. And so it was this sort of value first premise, which I think feels very digital. And I've heard people in the mobile space talk about, privacy and notifications. And what they've said is, if you're worried about someone turning on, geolocation inside your app or letting you notify them, you haven't offered them enough value.
Right.
You're asking them for more things. And I think that's been one of those huge perspective flips for us, which is this sort of value first, and then the other stuff sort of comes,
Yes.
right? If you and I have a good relationship, we naturally weather rough patches better. We naturally seek each other out when we're in complex situations, right? You become, it does something to the relationship that adds authenticity.
Yeah.
It feels more authentic, it feels real than less transactional.
Right.
So what was that like for you to take that idea and, hey, can we have a whole
Chunk of money to
a
go
chunk
do
of money
something.
and some people, and we'd really like to focus on this, and I don't really have any metrics to show you yet. I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, the first thing we had to do was go out and create a business case for this, and it was a business case based on really where customer experience was going, where customer expectations were going, where our business units wanted to go with their offering, and what would be required of Rockwell from a capability standpoint, not technology, capability, which is technology plus people, domain expertise. What would be required of Rockwell to not only support that, but equally as important, sustain it. Because I think what you see in a lot of cases is that, that the technology is the answer to everything, and you plug in some technology, and then you just move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And what happens? It sort of just sits there and it, dies on the vine. And so, the business case we built was around for Rockwell. Here's what we're seeing among our customers and among our partners and internally as emerging or existing demand for capability to support their various requirements or opportunities, and then went through a process of really demonstrating that Rockwell was not positioned to enable those things, and so what that led to was a transformation business case that said around these key areas of capability, around digital customer experience, around product information and customer data, around e-commerce as a process, around this idea of a more automated and enabled, self-serve support capability. Rockwell needs to advance itself in this regard, and so we positioned a business case around technology investment, but then also organizational transformation in those areas, and none of this. We had previously talked about how, where does ROI factor into this? That business case was not ROI based. It was capability based, and because there is really no ROI in some of these very foundational investments that you're that we were asking for. It's what you do with them. Once you get a scalable and connected experience management capability that can fully connect your customer's life cycle from end to end. How do you leverage that to drive that value-added customer, differentiated customer experience, and syndicate that across your company so that it can be used over and over and over again? And that goes for all of those capability areas. So, we were very, very transparent and very clear that this was not an ROI-based initiative. That said, we knew how far that would go. And so what we did do, though, is we looked at the business and the product and service opportunities that many of our areas of our company were pursuing, and we said, they're not going to be able to fully realize these things without what's included in this digital transformation business case. And so we can bring, as an enterprise, we can make this investment, bring those capabilities, and bring them in at scale. And then the ROI in that is what we do with it in terms of activating those capabilities in pursuit of the business strategies that we have, rather than doing that opportunity by opportunity or requirement by requirement, which is very expensive. It's not sustainable, and so when it really is transformative in that we're not only seeking to bring in some technology capability, but we're seeking to either introduce new or transform existing organizational capability, which frankly is probably going to be the harder part in this journey. So, and we're really just in our first year of actually, kind of being funded and moving forward. The first 2 years were spent around a lot of dialogue with our senior leadership and business case building and things like that.
Was there a moment, milestone, a capability, a thing you built? Was there a moment where everybody looked around the table and said, "Oh, this is," like, where it became real? It went from theoretical to and it made sense to everyone. Was there a moment like that?
There was, and one of the things when I talk about customer experience, one of the things we've been working on is a platform that is a method through which we want to engage our customers end to end digitally, and it's a website, but it's more than that. We call it a platform because it's intended to integrate with other applications and connect those experiences and have data flow across those applications, so they can be, we can leverage it in ways that was previously not available to us, and that is one of the things we pursued through this now near next metaphor. Was, we were very agile about how we pursued that capability, and in a matter of months released a working version of that to support our business case. And that is what started to turn the light on in people's heads, saying, okay, now I understand why it's important that we make this easy for our customers. And I understand now some of the limitations or obstacles we're putting out into the marketplace from a customer experience standpoint by putting some of the burden of engagement on our customers rather than removing that burden. And it's through scalable vehicles like this that can be integrated, that they said, oh, I see how customers can now move through that life cycle in a very easy and consistent way. And so, while this wasn't necessarily ROI based, it didn't mean that we couldn't take 3 years to actually introduce any value back into the organization. And so, it was really a focus on, within the first year of doing this, we needed to bring forward capability that could begin to yield value. And so that's what we were able to do, and that's what started to turn the lights on for things. So part of that process is visualization, is what we call it. And because a requirements document people can't really sink their teeth into that, right? And they don't really have a concrete understanding of what it is you're talking about. So the earlier you can visualize things,
absolutely,
and let them get their hands on it and sink their teeth into it, the earlier they're going to understand actually what it is that you're trying to accomplish and the value in it, and the earlier they're going to become more supportive of it and get behind it and want to jump on board. Yeah, so that's the experience we've had.
Yeah, that imagining piece, right? You asking someone to imagine this thing that's very clear in your mind and you're using words to articulate it, but the high-res mock-up has so many dividends, right? Mm-hmm. To help bring people, like, the level of excitement that generates. And then people start asking questions like, so if I click that button then, and you're like, yeah. And so it becomes that shared model that people can imagine together.
Absolutely. And that goes for, and for those listening, I would encourage you to pursue that with every digital transformation initiative you have, whether it is customer facing or whether it is internal. And we've taken a prototype approach with databases, with kind of internal systems that say, we're going to release this in a prototype or pilot mode just to begin learning and for people to begin to engage with it, so we get those earlier returns, that earlier buy-in, that earlier benefit.
Yeah, I mean, historically in the IT space, there's this notion of selling ideas, which always made me feel a little uncomfortable because it felt like I'm supposed to be tricking someone or talking them into this idea that is not legitimate. And so, you start a project and you're excited about it. The technology team is excited about it. Maybe the person whose idea is excited about it. But I have found that those mock-ups, the prototypes, the clickable demos, those are things that generate excitement instead of sell the idea, right? Where now all of a sudden the momentum is high. Everyone understands and is excited to go do this thing and where it's going to take us. And I think we've been fortunate that because of that early CRM experience, that has fundamentally, I don't think we knew that at the time, but I think today, looking over our shoulder, that fundamentally changed the way we talked
Sure.
and thought about, because we're a much smaller organization. So I wouldn't say that we've broken down all the silos, but I will tell you that, the way we think about technology, the way we use technology, we're looking at other systems now that are not traditionally thought of through the human-centered lens, and
Sure.
we're doing all that work. We've taken those originally mobile, now digital kind of concepts, the early prototyping, the what's it like to be the person on the other side of the screen, where are they standing when they're trying to do that, right?
Yep.
And applied it more broadly. So what's happened inside Rockwell from a thought or perspective standpoint? Has that trickled down all the way yet?
It has, and it's not to say that we've broken down all those boundaries as well. I mean, that's going to take a long time, and there's a cultural aspect of digital transformation that, like I said, is probably the hardest barrier to break through, because especially in organizations that have longevity, you're talking about years of culture and behavior that have been very successful. Actually, Rockwell is a very successful company, and it's based on how they've grown up and established themselves, and the structure and the processes and the operating methods that they have, and it's not about breaking those down. It's about evolving them. And so what's happened...
That sounds like a practice speech you're giving, right? Seems like you may have had to...
2 years.
Yeah, you may have had to give that speech and go, no, we're not throwing away,
Be
we're
very careful about
evolving
that.
it.
Yeah, so, but what's happened, I think there's two things that have happened. One is that, after having so much dialogue about this with their senior leadership, they've become very supportive. And so there's almost a requirement at that level of the company now that as we talk about our digital transformation initiative and how we're engaging, there's a top-down sort of mandate, which is very, very important here, by the way, to be successful. There's a top-down mandate that we have collaboration and engagement around this, and that when the digital business group wants to engage with you, we want to promote that engagement, because it means we're going to collaborate on something for a better outcome for our customers and for us internally. And so there's that sort of kind of endorsement and that support coming down through the organization to drive a lot of that. But probably more importantly, there's been more of an organic enthusiasm that has driven a lot of that. As we put some of some of that visualization into people's hands and socialize it across the company, people want to get on board. And so, even you talked about areas that wouldn't sort of traditionally manifest themselves from a customer standpoint. One of the areas that we're engaging with is our supply chain group, because there is information in the supply chain that is important to our customers.
Sure.
And so, we're motivated, and they are equally motivated to think with that customer first mentality, and to collaborate with us around how we're gonna take what's valuable for our customers in there and position it to enable them. And so, and that's just one example. And so I think, as we have done a lot of work in being very outreach oriented from a socialization perspective, and tried to drive a very collaborative practice out of our digital business organization, people have jumped on board, and so there's a willingness and a desire to be part of the digital journey that we're moving forward. And so when I talk about having a digital organization, you need that, I think, to have focus and leadership around the roadmap that you have in place to pursue that. But that organization isn't going to do it all itself. It requires the participation and collaboration of the whole company to realize the benefits and the roadmap you're trying to realize.
So when you talk about that enthusiasm, does that go all the way down to line level employees, people doing customer service and buying and writing POs, do they get access to that, or are we talking about just the managerial level with that excitement?
I think at the managerial level initially, but when that level of staff begins to hear about these things, I mean, they probably get more excited at the managerial level because they're the ones on the front lines. They're feeling whatever limitations or inefficiencies or missed opportunities are there. They're the ones who feel the brunt of that. And so when they see the potential, they get very excited. And so a lot of our engagement to inform what we want to do, we involve those individuals because they have great ideas, frankly, because they live it every day.
Sure.
So it really is, the broader you can cast this net from an engagement standpoint internally, the more successful you're likely to be. But you need that. It's really helpful to have that organization that's sort of just steering the ship and keeping the company focused on pursuing this roadmap. So,
so we have taken, like I said, we've taken that storytelling, right, and we try to, I think, not necessarily bottom up, but I think we do that. I find that I listen to, like, my office is next to the guy who does analytics and BI, and so I see people go in there, and he's doing that a little bit every day, right? Somebody comes into this idea, and he's like, "Oh, I like it," right? And I think there's something, for me at least, more positive about the digital approach to things, right? Rather than, we talked earlier about that. Okay, we're going to gather all your requirements, and then the door is closed, and then we're going to go make it, and then you're going to get it, and that near, next setup, right? That it feels like an invitation to collaborate.
Yes.
It feels like if you woke up on a Thursday night at midnight and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I have the best idea ever," that the door's not closed. Has that changed? Have you seen that start to manifest in a broad, not just digital culture, but like, is there a higher level of collaboration and brainstorming, and do you feel like, is that bubbling a little bit under the surface?
Yeah, it is, and it's driven by two things. The first is, I think that, one of the things we've done through the storytelling we've done and through the sort of the strategic context we've tried to create within Rockwell is provide a platform for that, right? Kind of introduce some new ways of thinking or some new methods of approaching things that people can start to sort of just roll around in their head and think a little bit differently. But the second is that, everybody is pursuing some level of digital engagement now across the company. It really kind of doesn't matter what area you work in. And in many cases, they need the same things to do what it is they need to get done. I mean, that's why we were somewhat successful that in our business case development with attaching what we wanted to accomplish from an enablement platform standpoint to the outcomes that our business units were trying to drive toward. Because there's some commonality across those things. So where you see the collaboration start to pop up is you get people talking, and they say, "Yeah, I need that, and I need that," and then all of a sudden everybody, you've got half a dozen people that have different strategies, but at the core of those strategies is the same capability, and none of them can do it without it. And so you get this natural coalescence of people to start talking around how can we come together to get after this. And so, previously at Rockwell and other places, I think, I would call those coalitions of the willing. They're a group of like-minded people that are well-intended and they want to solve a problem or pursue an opportunity, and they come up with some great ideas, but ultimately it kind of lands flat because there's no budget, there's no way to get it done. Everybody's got their job to do. And so, I think the advantage we've created within Rockwell now is that there's a place for that stuff to go, and a mechanism and a forum for us to not only bring those people together, but actually to execute it. Or we're executing on those foundational capabilities that all of them need, so that when the time comes for them to come together, they're actually, coming together and they're leveraging kind of the same capability to drive toward their outcomes.
So, originally when you were talking, I'm thinking like you guys coming to business units and saying, "Hey, we're going to enable this feature. you know, but it sounds like you've got people knocking on your door bringing business to you.
Certainly, absolutely.
Which is a
It
good
goes
place
both
to be
ways.
in, right? Yeah, that's a great place to be in.
Absolutely. And it began, you know, one of the, we have a program management office within our digital organization, and one of the things that they do is demand management.
Yeah.
And
That's my next question.
that's already getting, you know, this stuff starts to get out a little bit in terms of what's coming, and that, you know, that line gets very long at the door. And it will continue to get longer. And so, you know, that's one of the key sort of operational mechanisms we need to become very good at and stay very good at, is how do we manage the traffic through that door, and how do we do it in a way that it's in line with the strategies of the business, right? That we're not just doing things because they're good ideas or they're cool, but if we're going to work on something or we're going to activate some capability, how does it support where the business is trying to go? Which is the ultimate driver of our digital transformation.
Yeah, I mean, that's almost not the best kind of internal marketing, but right, when
Yes.
everyone's kids, so the first department says like, look at this thing we got from the digital transformation office, and then somebody else is like, oh, we have an idea, and then, but that to me has been, ironically, so we started, that CRM situation probably started 3 or 4 years ago. Earlier this year, we stood up a PMO specifically around demand management because we had the same problem, because we were making great products that people were excited about, that they saw value in, and all of a sudden there was a run at our door in much the same way. And so I think that when you and I talked about naming the session, I think that doing a digital transformation or trying to think digitally has a lot of sneaky things you don't realize until you're in the mix. And I think the supply chain example is a great, right? Or the idea that you're going to give way to a healthier, more positive, collaborative culture, right? And most people are thinking about like, it's a website.
Right.
Like, what? I don't understand. So do you have other nuggets like that where you've seen that you were surprised by things that happened or changes?
Well, I think that, we name the section acting digital, changes it, right? And really maybe it's more about being digital.
I suppose that's true.
Because it goes down.
We moved from like
Right,
thinking digital to acting digital. So it should have been being digital.
Because it's the thought process.
Yeah.
What drives. So I would. There's 2 things I would say about that. One is that digital transformation has nothing to do with digital. It's a business strategy, right? It's evolving your business to be more capable in some key areas that it positions it to engage with customers in new ways and differentiated ways, and to position yourself as an organization to think differently and to activate differently. And so when you talk about people just kind of coming into offices and you kind of hear them ideating on things like that, that's thinking digital, right? Yeah. It's not, okay, all right, now I got this process and I have to go do my requirement. It's how can we get something going where we can start to learn, right? And we can start to actually gain some insight into where we want to take an opportunity and things like that. So it's really, it's a bit of an evolved sort of way of thinking or mindset beyond the way we traditionally do things today. And that's really important to being successful here. One of the things that surprised me is that was the how early in our journey people really started to jump on board with this. And what that told, there was a lot of selling. You talked about selling. Yeah. There's a lot of selling initially, but once we got through a few months of that, everybody just really started to nod their head and were in violent agreement with what we were talking about. And that's because it was swimming around in a lot of people's heads anyway, I think.
You were articulating things that people were already sort of feeling but couldn't put together.
Exactly. And I think, they may have been thinking about it within their own scope of responsibility or accountability within the company, but it allowed them to really, begin to socialize some of that thinking, but think even more broadly than that, saying that, yes, this would really benefit my product or service, but boy, I could see how this could tie what I do to something over on this side of the business where I know that there's some synergy or opportunity. And so I think the seeds of digital thinking in the company that were there, but not necessarily apparent until a broader dialogue started about the company's pursuit of this, was one thing that kind of surprised me. I think that the other things were how common some of the capability needs are across the organization. You know, where in the past we may be doing literally the same thing over and over and over again at great cost and risk of technical debt, you know, and redundancy in operations and things like that, and the opportunity to really commonize that, not in pursuit of commonizing it so that it adds no value to the specific areas it's tended to support, but kind of commonizing it from an architecture standpoint where we actually can drive more value in a scalable and repeatable way, in a sustainable way, and let our stakeholders inside the company drive more value within their respective areas based on that platform.
And then you say, like, what does that have to do with websites and AP? Nothing, right?
Yeah.
It's your point earlier that digital has sort of become the shorthand for this experience-focused, human-focused scalability, you know, and I think if you think it's about technology, it's not.
You got
really.
it all wrong.
It's all wrong.
It's simply an enabler.
Yeah.
Because it's more about organizational transformation.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I hate to interrupt, but
That's all right.
if you want to give some closing remarks, we want to leave a little bit of time for questions.
Sure.
Sure.
Any advice? So we've been talking about our stuff. So my question is, you're from a big outfit. What advice do you have for people out there?
I would say that the first thing you need to do is get some executive support. You need at least one sponsor among your senior leadership to view this as a fundamental business strategy for your company, and then support you in the creation of a mechanism. Whatever, there's multiple ways of doing this, but support you in a mechanism for driving out what I would call some focused activity in this regard. Put a roadmap together that is going to address key capabilities that you need for digital transformation. I would also say that don't be afraid to get yourself some help. Our business cases and our roadmaps were done through partnerships with consultants that we still have with us today, and are frankly have been a big key to our success and have added a lot of velocity into what we've been able to bring forward and into the company. So those are I think from a business and strategic perspective, two nuggets of advice. But the third, and I'll go back to what we talked about earlier, is visualize.
Yeah.
As you, regardless of how you're pursuing digital transformation, get stuff into people's hands.
Yep.
So that they can chew on it, experience it, because it creates much earlier support and endorsement and value.
Yeah, I mean,
and learning and insight, and I can go on and on.
My vote.
So many benefits.
Yeah, number 3 for me is my vote. Right. I mean, to make something that's real, whether it's a mock-up or a prototype, and put it in somebody's hands so that they can understand that it's not theoretical, and
Right.
it allows them to sort of be in the same place mentally as you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No question.
All right.
Great. We have a bunch of questions from the audience.
Okay, great.
Right.
I know the first one that came in, it relates to your visualization point and manufacturing in this case.
Sure.
So I want to know, manufacturing companies, especially the processors that we deal with, the plastics industry, aren't really known as first movers when it comes to digital strategy, right?
Sure.
How can they talk their management into visualizing this kind of thing and being able to move forward even with website or with other social media, other kind of digital work that you're doing when you're talking about a small mid-sized manufacturer or somebody in that industry it's considered an older industry, I guess, anyway. Are there specific strategies for that?
There's what we used to drive some of that support and endorsement from a leadership perspective, more than anything else, was a kind of an overload of information on the value of customer experience and how important that is. And so, and the fact that there's research out there, Forrester, Gartner, Walker, you name it, that talks about customers value ease of doing business and an enabled experience with you as much, in many cases, as much as they do as the quality of your product, because their time time for them is money, And the more time they have to spend on engaging with you and trying to get information from you, trying to buy something from you, the less time they have for actually doing the rest of their job. So, you know, we really hammered that quite a bit, that whether it's social, whether it's research or access to information, whether it's support, the ease of which we can activate that for our customers, the more value we're going to deliver to them in terms of their experience with us. So we use that experiential piece really as something to drive a lot of support and engagement from our leadership. And it's particularly important in manufacturing, I think, because it is a complex industry, right? These are not simple sales cycles we go through or simple solutions we're offering. So how can you look at that a little bit differently and say, what can we lift out of those processes, those experiences, those operations that can yield some customer benefit?
That's what I say. Find one compelling case.
Yeah.
And say, here's an example, we could go do this thing and look how it would change. And if that works, that becomes the model for people to hang their hat on. Oh, I see how doing this one thing had all these other trickle-down effects.
Right.
And now all of a sudden you're talking about finding more of those things, right? And you're taking it out of the theoretical, and I think that's your point, right?
I know Eric mentioned too, the supply chain area is one that sometimes you get a lot of agreement with, a lot of concurrence with what you're doing. In manufacturing, is that an area to go to first? Are there other areas that, I guess marketing for one, other areas that you want to get first concurrence with some of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think,
examples.
Marketing's been going through its digital transformation for a while now.
Sure.
You know, it just generally, not at Rockwell, but also in many places.
Generally,
and
talking about manufacturing.
Right, and so, you know, how do I make it easier for people to understand who I am, engage with me, and buy? You know, and so, and how do I use intelligence, you know, to derive that and analytics? So, marketing is often a good place to start because there's a well-established, I would say, sort of transformational platform out there from a technology and thought leadership perspective that can get you going. But, for us, some of the what we view as some of the early opportunities is how can we help people get information easier and faster that is relevant to them, and how can we support them in a more digital and faster way? How can we make those things more accessible for our customers? Because frankly, our customers and a lot of B2B customers spend a lot of time in those two areas, and because of the nature of our business. And so that's where we kind of viewed some early opportunities for wins, is if we can get information in the hands of our customers faster and easier, on their terms, not ours, on theirs.
Right.
And we can provide mechanisms of support engagement for them that make it easier for them to do, again, on their terms, and by mean on their terms, when they want it, where they want it, how they want it.
Sure.
Those are really good opportunities for B2B and particularly manufacturing companies to get some early value. And often they're not, I don't want to call them easy because they're not, but they are, they can be more quickly activated in many cases.
And a follow-up to that, some want to know how you move from the transactional nature of this to the value nature of this. Talked about conducting a transaction and through your digital journey, gaining the acceptance of those in the organization. But how do you move to value with that quickly? And that gets into our whole ROI question and how to work with metrics and some of this, which are difficult.
I think you mentioned it earlier when you said by the time you started talking about digital, it resonated with people. They couldn't have put a word on it before. Right. And I think we were in that same place where people were experiencing like this thing that was rumbling around. And I think some part of the success of this is find an organization if you're in a place that is sort of ready for it. Because if everyone has said, right, I'm not interested, you're going to throw yourself up against the hill over and over. So I think part of this is inherently, do you see some interest in the organization? And then it's about storytelling. It's about stringing those compelling use cases together. It's about painting a picture from the customer's perspective. Like, look at how different this would be. Oh, look, here's what our competitor does. Here's what we would be doing, right? And all of a sudden, That's pretty powerful, right?
Definitely.
If you're in a company that's willing to see that experience has value, right? And there's going to be places where that's not how they value themselves, that's not how they differentiate themselves. So I think part of this isn't going to work in every place.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think the path to value is demonstrating success.
Exactly.
That's it, and
that varies with the organization. It sounds
right.
like in a lot of cases.
It does.
Right?
And Neil mentioned it earlier. Is find a thing that there's so the desire to boil the ocean here is very strong because you're talking full life cycle enterprise end to end. Where do I start? Right. Find something.
Opens up the floodgates.
Yeah.
Find that opportunity that you think you can get an early win. And that's how you begin to demonstrate value. And what ends up happening is it builds on itself. And so, a lot of our early wins in our digital transformation are not going to be ROI driven. But as we become more enabled and as we bring more capability into the company the longer we're on this roadmap, we are going to start better enabling our business units to activate their strategies. Okay. And that's where you get better products, better services, better enablement of our customers.
A related question.
That's where monetary value is.
Great. Well, a related question to that is in the B2B space, particularly when you're dealing with customers. Mm-hmm. There are examples of how you can generate the value. You talk about information already. I imagine you're talking about brand building in some cases and penetrating the marketplace, even with new customers and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Are there examples you've seen out there of how that's done well or successfully?
Well, they can be hard to come by in the B2B space.
Sure.
I think one example, frankly, of a company that has been on this journey for a while and that has really positioned itself as a leader is Grainger from a digital perspective. I mean, they've reinvented their entire business around a digital model. They still have their stores, but a lot of their business is driven through their digital engagement with their customers, whether it's buying off their website or sort of digital integration through procurement and things like that. Some of what we've done from a business case standpoint has been based on how they've sort of evolved their business to account for the way the customers want to buy from them, frankly. Grainger's pursuit was based on what kind of business they want to be, but what they saw happening in the marketplace in terms of how their customers wanted to procure the things that they sold. And it was very different than always walking into a store and buying from a counter. So to me, that's one example of a company that has not only evolved itself, but has evolved the market, frankly.
Right. Yeah, and we only have a couple minutes left, but I'm curious that can you use that to expand the market too, besides just giving information more quickly, more effectively to your existing customers? Mm-hmm. Are there good examples of how companies have done that to really expand their presence in the market or build new customer base with this?
Well, I think for us, what you've seen in manufacturing, which has often been a distributor-led industry, right? What you're seeing is some companies who are introducing digital selling models are able to access geographies that they or markets they previously had not been able to do so. So we've got competitors and partners in our space who through digital selling models have broadened their reach, frankly, and made themselves available to be purchased from in markets and geographies that they weren't previously available. And we're pursuing that same path and when we consider this globally. So
I think from the distributor standpoint, right, since anything that we sell, you can buy from someone else, right?
Sure.
It's out there. The product isn't a differentiator. So for us, the experience is the product that can be differentiated. So when a molder has an amazing experience with us, and they tell their friend who's also a molder, or they're at a industry conference, and that's the discussion. That's how, to me, when you say broaden our customer base, right? It's because the experience is the product we're essentially marketing. And that's how it affects us.
It's integral to what you do.
Yeah.
Oh, great. We're out of time, but fantastic discussion. Very interesting. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this could get some great ideas on how to effectively grow or develop their digital strategy from some of this, and very useful and very important discussion, I think, in the manufacturing sector too. So I want to thank Neil Goodrich of M. Holland Company and Eric Rail of Rockwell Automation for their time today, taking us through the digital journey that you guys have. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today to learn about these digital tools and how they can translate into value and growth for any business. I wanted to mention too that we appreciate your attendance. That again, this event today was fueled by M. Holland and produced by Plastics News. If you want to revisit the chat, the entire event will be archived in the live stream webinar section of plasticsnews.com. Finally, make certain to set your calendars to join us for the next Fireside Chat, which will be held at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central on Friday, September 15th, if I can get the words out. At that chat, we will delve into leading developments in flexible packaging with a discussion that will include speakers from M. Holland, Nova Chemicals, and Brentwood Plastics. Please join us then, and thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you at a future Fireside Chat.